morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Chapter 17. The very last bit of the last video was we're talking about ginkgos. A ginkgo is a special kind of a tree. You may actually have one in your yard. If you live in Cochran, the First Baptist Church in the middle of downtown, on Dyke Street, they actually have 3 quite large ginkgo trees. In the fall, they turn a brilliant yellow color. Very, very beautiful. The trees themselves are not rare. It's just the fact that there's only one species of them. And another interesting thing, another unusual thing, is that these trees, the trees are either male or female, and that is not the case with most plants. Most plants are both. They're both male and female. They make both male and female sex organs. A single flower is both male and female sex organs. So it's unusual that the ginkgo, the individual trees, are either male or female. Most of the time, if they're planted ornamentally, they choose to plant male trees because the female trees make fleshy seeds that stink. So, we talked about gymnosperms. Gymnosperms are the naked seeds. Most of them are conifers. There's about 40-ish thousand species of conifers. Most of them are conifers. There's a few cycads. There's only one species of ginkgo. There's a few neophytes. We didn't talk about the neophytes. Don't worry about them. Remember, there's 300,000 species of tracheophytes. Of them, there's about 50,000-ish species, not quite actually, about 30,000 species of the conifers. They're the angiosperms, 275,000. So the 290,000 species of tracheophytes, 275,000 species of them are angiosperms, are flowering plants. Most plants are flowering plants. They range in size from duckweed. Have you ever seen on a pond, you ever seen like where an alligator will surface from underneath of those little green dots that are all over a pond surface, and see little green dots all stuck over the alligator's face? That's duckweed. Duckweed is an angiosperm. Duckweed can be the size of a few millimeters, all the way up to the eucalyptus tree. The eucalyptus tree is the largest angiosperm. It is not the largest tree. It's the largest flowering tree. What is the largest tree? We just talked about it in the last video. The largest trees are the California redwoods. The angiosperm, the largest angiosperm is eucalyptus trees, and they get to be about 100 meters tall. And 100 meters is still really friggin' tall. You're still talking about like a 30-story building, a gigantic tree. But sequoias are even bigger than that. Flowering plants, angiosperms. Isn't it cute? Kitty. This is supposed to be taught in a whole classroom full of people, and the reason why I use this picture is to make the girls go, "Oh, cute little kitty." A flower. What is a flower? A flower is a reproductive structure. A flower, its whole job is sex. Each flower is both male and female. Each flower has both male and female parts. If we look at a flower, in the center of a flower, we've got this big thing called a carpel, which is in the center. Coming around the center of the flower are these little things called stamen. And then you got the petals that come out, which I'm not showing the petals. Okay? These are both male and female. These things are the anthers. Anthers are male. And this is the carpel. And the carpel is female. Every flower is both male and female. Within that center carpel is an ovary, and obviously an ovary is going to contain eggs. That anther, those anthers that surround the carpel, is going to make pollen. And the pollen, obviously, its job is the male sex cell. The egg is the female sex cell. The male sex cell, its job is to fertilize the egg. The whole job of the flower is to attract a pollinator, and most flowers will produce a sugar-rich liquid. The job of this sugar-rich liquid is to be incentive for the pollinator to show up and to pollinate the flower. Now think about it. If I want a bee to carry the pollen from my flower to some other flower, because again, yes, some species of plants can self-pollinate, but they'd really rather not. If you're going to have sex, you prefer to do it with a partner. The whole point of sex is to mix up the genes, to make a brand new individual. If I self-pollinate, then I'm not mixing up the genes. I'm just using my same genes over again, so I'm just making another one of me, and who wants that? You want to mix up the genes to get new children, to get new individuals. So while some plants are able to self-pollinate, most plants don't want to. They want their pollen to be carried to some other plant so that they can mix up the genes. So if I'm going to entice a bee to come to my flower and get a drink, do I want to give them as much as they want, or do I want to give them just a little bit? You want to give them just a little bit. You want to make sure that they want to go to other flowers to get enough to drink. So they go from flower to flower to flower to flower. When the little bee goes to the base of the flower, what's sticking up around her? What's sticking up around her are those anthers, those male sex parts of the flower that are making the pollen. And what is that pollen going to do? Is that little bee is trying to get at the center of the flower. It's going to drop pollen on her back. And then when she goes and she flies off to another plant, hopefully some of that pollen will come off of her back and will land on that center carpel, that center part of the flower, and then the pollen will grow down and will fertilize that egg that's inside of the carpel. Most flowers, if it's designed to be pollinated by a bug, by a living thing, it's going to make nectar, a sugar-rich liquid. As we said, the pollinators, the job is to brush against the anthers, and the pollen sticks. The bug will then drop the pollen off as it goes from flower to flower to flower, fertilizing the ovary in each flower. Here we see some flowers. Unfortunately, none of them really illustrate the anatomy of a flower very well. We can see some of the anthers right here around the center of the flower, and then this structure in the center, you can't see it very well because it's pointing straight at you. This is that female part of the flower. Female part of the flower called the carpel, and the male part is called the anthers. And I don't know if you can see this little white dust. This little white dust that's all around, that's the pollen. Each different flower type is made to be fertilized by a different kind of animal. Bats can be pollinators, not sure if you're aware of that. Bats, because they fly at night, they like white flowers. White flowers are easier to see at night. They like large white flowers with lots of perfume because it's easier to smell at night than it is to see at night. So the perfume is the guide that helps to bring the bat to the flower. A big white flower, big, easy to see, white, easy to see. Moths are also pollinators, and moths also fly at night, so they also are attracted to white flowers. And moths actually have very good senses of smell. And so they are also attracted to flowers that make lots of perfume. So night blooming jasmine. If you've ever been walking, in the neighborhood in the evening sometimes, and some really, really wonderful smells of some plants, really rich smells. Those are specifically plants that bloom at night, and their job is to attract a moth. Because it's difficult to see at night, but if I can smell it, I can zero in on it, on where the smell is coming from, and then I will go to the flower and pollinate it. Butterflies like tiny bright colored flowers. Bees don't care what the flower is, they like all flowers. So the flower is designed to attract a particular kind of animal, and as we said, moths are attracted to flowers that open at night and release scents. Moths have good senses of smell, and they're attracted to the smell first, and they'll also be a white flower. Night blooming jasmine is a white flower. Honeysuckle, lots of fragrance, right? It's a white flower. Any kind of flower that puts out lots of fragrance is going to be specifically something that's probably pollinated by a moth. Butterflies are attracted to small, brightly colored flowers. Bats, as we said, large and white, and bees don't care. Bees are attracted to all kinds of flowers. Once you fertilize that carpel, once you fertilize that ovary, once the pollen makes it to the carpel and grows down into the ovary and fertilizes the egg in there, I now have a little embryo and I have a little baby plant. If I take that little baby plant and I wrap a food source around it and then wrap a seed coat around it, I now have this structure called a seed. That seed, it depends on the plant, but lots of seeds will want to put that seed, lots of plants will want to put that seed inside of a fruit. Now, when I say the word fruit, you think apples and oranges and strawberries and pears and things. And those are fruits. But in the biological term, the biological definition of a fruit is anything that comes from a flower is a fruit. And the job of the fruit is to disperse the seed. It doesn't necessarily have to be something good to eat to be a fruit. It also doesn't have to be something sweet to be a fruit. A bean, a pea, don't those come from a flower? Have you ever grown beans in the backyard? Have you ever grown peas? A tomato, a cucumber, don't those things all come from flowers? If it comes from a flower, it is a fruit. If it is meant to be eaten, then that fruit is meant to be dispersed by an animal. Think about how a horse eats an apple. When we eat an apple, we eat around the core and then we throw the core away. But what's in that core? The core of the apple contains seeds. Think about a horse eating an apple. They eat the whole thing. And so some of those seeds will go in the horse's gut. And how far can that horse travel before it's going to poop and poop out those seeds? Oh, it could go miles and miles. Think about the apple. We have an old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And what it means is the kids are often very much like their parents. But what it really means is the apple does not move very far away from its parent tree, which therefore means that when an apple drops, if it drops the seeds, the little saplings are going to try to grow literally in the shadow of their parent. And that's not a good place for that little seed to grow. They need to grow somewhere else. And so if I put the seed inside of a good tasting fruit, then an animal will eat that fruit and will go many miles away. And it will carry that fruit and then will poop it out in a handy packet of fertilizer. And then once they poop out that handy packet of fertilizer in that seed, the seed will grow. And after the seed grows, now this baby plant is many miles away from its parent and will have a much better chance at growing.